Welcome to another video from the Spark Disability Media Resources Hub. Today I'm going to be talking about NDIS plans, some of the language that is used in plans and the different sections of a plan, and how the way the NDIA and planners at the NDIA think about the supports that might be available to people when they're developing plan funding, and how that can affect the way that plans are then able to be used. Now that's a lot to get through. So this video is part one of a two-part series about NDIS plans. Today we're going to be talking specifically about defining some of the language that the NDIS uses to help unpack what that language means and what it is really saying about a person's situation when their plan is developed and approved. So let's get into it. I'm going to begin by laying out some of the language that the NDIS uses, explaining some of the terms that you might see on an NDIS plan and what that language means. So specifically, we're going to be talking about goals, informal supports, community supports, mainstream supports, funded supports, and then the support budgets and support categories that you might find those funded supports included in a plan. So to make things a little bit clearer, hopefully easier to understand, we're going to use an example of what a goal might mean and how they play out in someone's NDIS plan. In this example, we've got the person at the center of the plan would like to go to university to graduate and receive a degree. But what's involved in achieving that goal? That's quite a big goal. And there may be steps along the way that are required before that person can ultimately can get to the end of their course and receive their degree. So some of those steps might look like, well, they might need to move away from their family home. They might need to become familiar with public transport routes. They might need to familiarize themselves with computer systems and university administration systems. So the NDIS thinks about goals in terms of things that people want to achieve. But it's very important to keep in mind that a big goal can be broken down into steps that might be spread across 1, 2, perhaps even 3 NDIS plans before that person is in a position to actually really achieve their main goal. So the next term we were talking about was informal supports. So examples of informal supports might be, again, we'll talk about our person who's heading off to university. It might be, for example, their mother, perhaps, who can sit down with them and work out a system to help them manage their money while they're living away from home, to make sure that perhaps that their rent is paid, that their bills are paid, that they have money available to buy groceries, and perhaps to have some money available to buy the things that they want to buy as well. They might have a younger brother perhaps, or a sister, who can help them to set up apps on their phone or perhaps on their computer to help them keep in touch with their family and their friends while they're away at university. And then perhaps their father or uncle or aunt might be in a position to be able to help them with inspecting places to live, meeting potential housemates, and then also submitting rental applications to real estate agents. So informal supports are family or friends that provide help, that make help available to the person at the centre of the plan. It's important to note that the NDIS doesn't generally provide funding for those informal supports to provide assistance to a person. The next kind of support is what's known as community supports. Examples of community supports might be a group, a social group that a person attends perhaps on a weekly basis to meet new people, make friends, hang out with friends. And it might be, for example, to go dancing or listen to music. Another example might be a sporting club. A different kind of community support is someone's employer or perhaps their manager at work. Now, employers and managers have an obligation to provide training to their staff, but it might be also that if a person is feeling stressed and under pressure at work, that perhaps their manager or their employer can help them to make some changes that might make it easier for them to keep those plates that are up in the air, to keep them spinning safely rather than have them come crashing down to earth. So community supports are connections that a person may already have to their community, or perhaps that they're looking to put in place. Again, the NDIA doesn't generally include funding specifically in a person's plan for the cost of community supports. For example, membership fees for a sports team. The third kind of support service that the NDIS doesn't provide funding for specifically in a person's plan is mainstream supports. So examples of mainstream supports might be if someone goes to see the doctor and part or all of that service fee is covered by Medicare, or perhaps they're prescribed medication and the cost of that medication is covered, at least in part, by the pharmaceutical benefits scheme. Another example might be public transport, bus services, train services, perhaps tram services if you're living in Melbourne. Again, those services are funded by state governments and their departments of transport. A third example of a mainstream service might be a local library service. So these, again, these services aren't funded by the NDIS, they're funded by local councils. So a simple way to understand mainstream services is that there are other government services that aren't funded by the NDIS. So we've talked a bit about the different kinds of services and supports that the NDIS doesn't provide funding for. But now we move on to funded supports, which the NDIA specifically provides funding for, hence the name. Now, funded supports are included in a person's plan across 3 different support budgets. And the first of these support budgets is called the core support budget. Now, core supports are to pay for supports and services that a person might receive in their home, such as cleaning, cooking, washing, might be personal care as well. It might be support that they receive to go out in the community, to be able to attend appointments perhaps, or to participate in a community group, for example, a sporting club or a social group. It might cover the cost of transport to attend activities and appointments, go shopping perhaps. And it can also cover the cost of small items of equipment that a person might use in their day-to-day activities. The next support budget is called the capacity building support budget. Now, the NDIA thinks about the capacity building budget as being particularly around developing a person's abilities to be able to do tasks that will help them to achieve their goals, as those goals are recorded in the person's plan. So going back to our example from earlier about the person wanting to go to university, one of the steps that they needed to do to be able to receive their degree, to graduate, might be to familiarize themselves with the university's computer systems and administration systems. So the person might choose to use their capacity building supports to develop a program for building their skills and their ability to manage the requirements of being at university. The third support budget is called the capital budget. Now, the capital support budget is included in people's plans to provide funding for the purchase of major items of equipment that the person might need, to pay for large repairs to equipment that the person might already have, or to replace their existing equipment that might be coming to the end of its life. The capital budget can also cover modifications to a person's home to make it easier for them to access different areas of their house. For example, installation of a ramp at the entrance to their home, or perhaps a widening of a doorway to allow for wheelchair access. So funded supports can be understood as support services that the NDIA has agreed to include funding for in the person's plan. So how do these different kinds of support mix together and work together in a person's life to help them to achieve the things that they want to be able to do? The NDIA understands these different kinds of services as working in a ring kind of formation around a person. So what does that look like? Well, at the center of the plan, you have the person whose plan it is. And then around them, the innermost ring, you have their informal supports. Even though the NDIS doesn't provide funding for those supports, they're considered to be the most important because they are the people who know the person at the center of the plan best. They know that person's support needs. They know what that person's goals are, what the person actually wants to achieve. And they are generally the people who are most available to provide support. So one step back from informal supports are community supports. So again, although community supports may not be as available to the person at the center of the plan as their family members or their friends, someone that the person has met through a social group or perhaps someone from work may still be in a position to offer support and to assist the person at the center of the plan. The next layer of support is mainstream supports. So that's other government services that aren't funded by the NDIS, but are available to provide support to anyone in the Australian community. And finally, the last layer of support is the NDIS funded supports. Now, the NDIA in many cases considers NDIS funded support services to be a kind of support that people can use to engage with and participate in support services within the other rings So for example, someone might use their NDIS funded supports to hire a support worker to help them to be part of a community group, for example. And the group then provides the social support, the social interaction perhaps that the person might be looking for. So the different kinds of supports work together from the innermost ring to the outside, and from the outermost ring, the NDIS funded supports, into the inner rings as well. Now that's a little bit about some of the language and the terms that you might find on an NDIS plan. And it's also hopefully helped to make clear some of the things that the NDIA thinks about when a planner is approving a person's NDIS plan. Keep an eye out for part 2 of this video series, because in the next video I'll be looking at and unpacking the individual sections of an NDIS plan, and again, some of the language that you might see and how the way a plan is set up can affect the choices that a person has in how they use their support funding. For now though, thanks for watching, take care of yourselves, and I hope you find your spark soon. Thanks again.